Hey everyone, Morgan here. So today I am going to be talking about flooding. I don't know if you guys have been hearing the news lately on what's been happening in Houston, but Houston has gotten slammed with flooding again. And they're calling it worse than Harvey, and Harvey was bad, okay? And this flooding is really bad. So I want to talk about how we can prepare for flooding. And the thing about flooding is it can happen anywhere. A lot of people think, oh no, it can just happen on the coastline or, stuff like that, because you do hear about it a lot, on the coastline, like in the South, Louisiana, Florida, in Texas here, we do hear about that a lot. But flooding can happen anywhere at any time. Yes, there are a lot of places like deserts will have a lot of flash flooding. Like here in Texas, there's a lot of flash flooding, a lot. But that doesn't mean that flooding can't happen anywhere. Let's look at the Midwest flooding, right? Floods can happen. So how do we even prepare for something like this? Well, I'm going to show you. Apart from the physical damage to property, experiencing a flood can be an extremely emotional time. So if you're not prepared physically and emotionally for the possibility of a flood, recovery can be slow, stressful, and costly. Spending just a few hours to make your home secure, to make sure that you have an emergency disaster plan, for flooding. And this is especially important if you do live in floodplains, if you do live in high risk areas, you especially need these plans. But I do think that most people should really consider a flood plan just in general, because you really never know what's going to happen. Especially people with basements, their basements can flood, these kinds of things. Flood damage can happen, for a variety of reasons. Okay. So first of all, you need to understand the flood risks in your area, like I was just saying, and you need to prepare your home and property. You need to respond when the water comes and recover after the flood. So those are the 4 things that we're going to have to do. There may be times when the area around you is flooded, but maybe your immediate home is good. In this case, you'll still want the basic necessities of preparedness. You'll need a blackout kit just in case, you don't have electricity. And then you will want your food and water to last you at least, I would say, 2 weeks, but a good start is 72 hours, but it could be longer than that for the water to recede. So you'll want plenty of food and water and alternative ways to cook. In addition to that, you will also want morale items such as board games, books, crafts, things to keep you entertained, because if you cannot leave your home for days at a time, you're going to need something to entertain yourselves with. When most people think about flooding, they think, oh, well, it's just flooding, right? It's just some water flooding the streets, no big deal, right? I'll just stay in my home. But actually what could happen, and this can happen with hurricanes and pretty much any other natural disasters as well, where one disaster is causing other disasters. And this is very common. So in the case of Imelda, it was triggering tornadoes, flash flooding, and severe thunderstorms. And you may think that, oh, this is just weather. No, it's not just weather, okay? When one thing is happening, it can trigger a whole bunch of other things. So you have to potentially be prepared for much more than just flooding. You have to be prepared for this severe thunderstorms, possibly tornadoes, high winds, things like that. This actually happens. Okay, so one of the first things you're going to want to do is to prepare. Like I was saying before, you want to know whether you're actually in a floodplain. You want to know, where relocation routes are, but you don't want to just rely on official relocation routes. You need an emergency disaster plan. You need to know many alternative routes out. So how do you even know that a flood is even coming in the first place, okay? You need intel. Intel is going to be your bestest friend. You're going to want intel from, if you have a ham radio, excellent intel. A NOAA weather radio, also excellent intel. A weather app on your phone, TV news, social media, wherever you get news, usually there will be some sort of warning that this stuff is happening. Okay, we see, this tropical storm or this hurricane or whatever is could be coming. Usually it's at least a couple days notice. Sometimes a lot more. It just really depends on what it is. So intel is going to be extremely important. If you do live in a floodplain, I would suggest you just not be home at all. Take your pets, take your emergency kits, take everything and get out of there. Your life and the lives of your loved ones are going to be more important than stuff. So when you have an emergency disaster plan, you're going to know alternative evacuation routes, and you're also going to know where exactly you're going to bug out to, okay? Where you're going to evacuate to. And so you're going to look at your plan and say, okay, let's try this location first, and you go there and you stay safe. And hopefully, you're choosing places that are far enough away from the situation in which it's not going to affect you the same or worse. So in saying all that with the emergency disaster plan and the intel, you also have to have the bug out bags, the go bags, the emergency kits, the bunch kits, whatever you want to call them. You're going to prepare emergency kits, and you also want to make sure that you're taking a little bit of extra water with you and a little bit of extra food. So you have your emergency bags, you grab those, as well as you're grabbing the intel, whatever you have, your phones, if that's the only intel that you have. Make sure that you do have alternative communication devices as well, such as the ham radio. Even if it's just listening, it's better than nothing. You'll also want to check your insurance policy to see if you're covered for flood damage. If you are in a flood damaged area, you're absolutely going to want to make sure that you talk to your insurance about that. But even if you're not in a high risk area, but you're in, let's say, a place that gets a lot of hurricanes, Florida, the East Coast, whatever, you do want to make sure that you have the proper protection. I would also highly recommend that you have financial preparedness as well. Save money and make sure that you have a good savings in place so that, whatever the insurance or whoever isn't going to help you out, then you have the savings that you can help to fall back on. If you do evacuate, or if you are driving in a strong storm and you are trying to get home or trying to get to your bug out location and there's a lot of water on the road, do not drive into water of unknown depth and current. This is extremely important. You will see so many videos and hear so many accounts of people who drive through water or thinking it's no big deal. And it either sucks them in or it takes their car away, okay? You're not invincible to water. Your car is not invincible, okay? So make sure that you either know the depth and the current or you are driving around alternative routes, okay? What if it's too late to leave? I want you to continue listening to the intel through the ham radio or the NOAA weather radio or whatever. I need you to get to higher ground. Higher ground could be anything. It could be your roof if that's the highest ground you can get to, but get to higher ground. If you have time, switch off all the electricity and gas to your home. Prepare for the well-being of your pets. Whether you are staying or going, you need to have a plan for your pets. Make sure they are going with you or that you are securing them at a friend's or you're taking them with you no matter what, okay? You have a plan for your pets. Make sure to carry that emergency kit up with you, wherever you're going to get higher ground. And then do not allow children to play in or near the floodwaters. And flood water in general shouldn't be potable. It shouldn't. You probably shouldn't even try to purify it simply because it could have a lot of super nasty stuff in it. It can take stuff up from the sewers. It could have just a bunch of nasty debris. Unfortunately, it could have just a lot of bad stuff in it. So you want to already have sufficient amount of water that you have at home or in your vehicle to rely on that water. Okay, so what do you do afterwards? After all of this has happened It's important that you stay away from drains, culverts, and water over knee deep. Do not use gas or electrical appliances that have been in flood water until they're checked for safety. Do not eat any food that has been in floodwaters, and always boil the tap water until the supplies have been declared safe. And that's why having emergency drinking water, in the bottles, already prepackaged and everything unopened is extremely important when it comes to flooding. And it's extremely important to have that stuff in your vehicle. And if you have to get to higher ground, trying to take water with you. And so with the aftermath, we have to keep in mind that the aftermath could be just maybe a couple days, depending on where you were. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years. It just really depends on the type of flooding that has happened to your property, all of the property damage that you have, the damage around in your community, because we're not just talking about our own house damage, but what if there's damage to the local grocery stores, local gas stations, all these things? There's recovery time for all of that. And we have to keep that in mind and consider that when we're thinking about recovery time. The longer we can be prepared with food and water and basic hygiene supplies, flashlights, a shelter system, these are extremely important things for us to be prepared for any natural disaster, and especially with a flood damage and such, because then, we can last not just the actual pre-disaster and the disaster, but we are also managing to thrive after the disaster until we can get back to normalcy, or as close to normalcy as possible, whenever that happens to be. In the majority of emergencies and disasters, the community will come together. Many people will be there to try to help you, but there may also be people there who want to harm you, who want to take advantage of the natural disaster situation. Be prepared for both scenarios. And the better off you're prepared, the better off you're able to help others who need it, instead of being a drain on the system, where the system can help other people instead of also needing to help you as well, because you're prepared enough to be able to handle you and your family. Thank you all so much for watching. Conquer tomorrow by preparing today. Talk to y'all later. Bye.